Billionaire CEO receives a call on his wedding day. His black ex-lover is in labor with his babies. "This is Dominic," he answered, voice clipped with the practiced efficiency that had built Horizon Dynamics into a $3.8 billion tech empire. "Dominic." The voice on the other end was breathless, strained, but unmistakable. "It's Imani. The babies are coming. Your daughters. They're coming now." The world around him seemed to still, the ambient sounds of his wedding preparations fading to white noise. "That's not possible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You told me you'd terminated the pregnancy." "I lied." The simple admission carried no apology, just the raw truth delivered between labored breaths. "After what you said, after how you reacted, I couldn't let you talk me out of keeping them." Outside the suite's window, 300 guests were being seated in the immaculate gardens of the estate. His soon-to-be father-in-law, Senator James Whitfield, greeted arrivals with practiced charm. In less than 10 minutes, Dominic would marry Catherine Whitfield, securing not just a wife but a powerful political alliance that would open doors even his billions couldn't unlock. "Where are you?" The question escaped his lips before he could consider its implications. "Mercy, General." "But Dominic, I'm not asking you to. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Have you ever had a single phone call completely shatter the life you thought you wanted? Have you ever stood at a crossroads where one decision would forever alter the course of not just your future, but the futures of everyone connected to you? What would you do if, on what was supposed to be the happiest day of your life, you discovered that everything you thought you knew was built on a foundation of half-truths and convenient assumptions? Hi, my beautiful sisters. This story is for every woman who's ever had to stand in her truth when the world wanted her to compromise. For every mother who's faced the terrifying prospect of raising children alone because she chose life and love over convenience. Your strength doesn't go unnoticed. Your courage to protect what matters most, even when it's difficult, even when you're afraid, that's the most powerful force in this world. Remember, sometimes the path that seems the hardest leads to the greatest blessings. Now let's continue with this remarkable story. If you've ever had to make a difficult choice that changed everything about your life, hit that like button right now and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. Dominic Vega had always been a man with a plan. Born to Cuban immigrants in a small apartment in Miami, he had watched his parents work themselves to exhaustion for minimal rewards. His father, once a respected engineer in Havana, cleaned office buildings at night while driving a taxi during the day. His mother, who had been a literature professor, took in laundry and minded neighbors' children to help make ends meet. They sacrificed everything to give their only son opportunities they never had. "Never leave your future to chance, Domenico," his father would say, his accent thickening with emotion. "In this country, with enough planning and hard work, you can become whoever you want to be." Dominic took those words to heart. By 16, he had mapped out his entire life. MIT on scholarship, followed by a Silicon Valley internship, then his own tech startup before 30. Marriage to a strategic partner by 35, first child by 37, political office by 45. Every step calculated, every move deliberate. And it had worked. Horizon Dynamics, the AI security company he founded at 28, had revolutionized digital protection systems for government and corporate clients. By 34, he had amassed a fortune that placed him firmly among America's wealthiest entrepreneurs. His face graced the covers of business magazines, his name appeared on lists of the most influential people in technology, and his dating life became fodder for gossip columns. When he met Catherine Whitfield at a fundraising gala in Washington, it seemed like destiny, or rather like the perfect execution of his life plan. The daughter of Senator James Whitfield, Catherine was elegant, educated, and connected to the highest echelons of political power. Their courtship proceeded with the same efficiency that characterized Dominic's business dealings. Dinners at exclusive restaurants, weekends at the Whitfield family estate in Virginia, carefully orchestrated public appearances that generated the right kind of press. The proposal, 8 months after their first meeting, took place on the senator's yacht during a sunset cruise. A photographer from Vanity Fair captured the moment Catherine said yes, her 3-carat diamond ring glinting in the golden light. The image appeared in the magazine's Power Couples issue, accompanied by a glowing profile of the tech visionary and the senator's daughter who planned to revolutionize the intersection of technology and public policy. It was perfect. It was exactly according to plan. It was completely empty of genuine emotion. But Dominic had become adept at ignoring that particular detail. Feelings were messy, unpredictable things that had no place in his strategic life blueprint. Catherine understood this implicitly. Their relationship was a mutually beneficial arrangement, a merger of complementary assets and ambitions. If it lacked passion, well, passion was overrated anyway, wasn't it? Then came Imani Taylor. He met her during a legal consultation for Horizon's expansion into international markets. A brilliant attorney specializing in global tech law, Imani challenged him in ways few people dared. In their first meeting, she systematically dismantled his proposed approach to European data protection regulations. Your strategy might work in theory, Mr. Vega, but it fundamentally misunderstands the cultural context of privacy in the EU, she had said, dark eyes flashing with intelligence and not an ounce of intimidation despite his reputation. You're thinking like an American tech CEO, not like a European citizen. Instead of the irritation he usually felt when contradicted, Dominic had been intrigued. Then help me think differently, he had replied. What began as professional consultation evolved into late-night strategy sessions, which transformed into dinners discussing philosophy and politics, which somehow became nights spent in each other's arms. Imani was everything Catherine was not. Warm, passionate, unscripted. She laughed without restraint, argued without deference, and loved without calculation. For 6 intoxicating months, Dominic lived a double life. With Catherine, he maintained the perfect facade of the devoted fiancé, attending the right events and saying the right things. With Imani, he discovered parts of himself he had long suppressed. Vulnerability, spontaneity, genuine connection. He told himself it was temporary, a diversion, an indulgence before settling into the life he had planned. Imani seemed to understand the boundaries, never asking for promises or commitments. Their relationship existed in a bubble outside his real life, intense, passionate, but ultimately separate from his true trajectory. Until the night she told him she was pregnant. They were in his downtown penthouse. The city lights spread below them like scattered stars. Imani had been unusually quiet during dinner, and when she finally spoke, her voice was steady but her hands trembled slightly. I'm pregnant, Dominic. 2 words that threatened to collapse his carefully constructed world. His response had been immediate, instinctive, and cold. This isn't part of my plan, Imani, he had said, voice eerily calm. I've been transparent from the beginning about not wanting children, about the trajectory of my life. You know who I am. She had nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. I do know who you are. I just thought, maybe who you are and who you present yourself to be might be different things. They're not. His tone had been final, brooking no argument. I'm engaged to be married. I have a 5-year expansion strategy for Horizon that requires my complete focus. Children aren't in the equation. I see. Her voice had grown quieter, but no less dignified. And what would you suggest? I'll make the arrangements, he'd said, already reaching for his phone. The best doctors, complete privacy, generous compensation for your time and discomfort. It was then that something had shifted in her eyes. Not anger or hurt, but a profound disappointment that cut him more deeply than rage ever could. Don't bother, she'd told him, gathering her things with deliberate calm. I'll handle it myself. She had walked out of his penthouse and his life that night. He called her repeatedly in the days that followed, but she never answered. After 2 weeks, he received a brief text. It's been taken care of. Please don't contact me again. He had believed her, wanted to believe her, needed to believe her, and so he had returned to his perfect plan, accelerating his wedding timeline with Catherine and throwing himself into Horizon's expansion with renewed focus. If he sometimes woke in the night thinking of Imani's face, if he occasionally found himself searching for her in crowds, he dismissed these moments as meaningless nostalgia, nothing more. Until today. Until 7 minutes before he was due to walk down the aisle. Until your daughters are coming now, shattered every certainty he had built his life upon. If you believe some of life's greatest blessings come from unplanned moments, leave a comment below. I read every single one. The Bellevue estate had been transformed for what society columns were already calling the wedding of the year. 20,000 white roses adorned the gardens where 300 of the most influential people in business, technology, and politics had gathered. Crystal chandeliers hung from silk-draped pavilions. A string quartet played softly as waiters circulated with champagne in hand-etched flutes. Catherine Whitfield stood in her bridal suite, a vision in a custom Vera Wang gown, surrounded by 6 bridesmaids in pale blue. Her mother adjusted the diamond-encrusted veil while a photographer captured every perfect moment. Senator Whitfield says they're ready whenever you are, Ms. Whitfield, an event coordinator announced from the doorway. Catherine smiled, the practiced expression of a woman who had been groomed for public life since childhood. Tell Daddy we'll begin right on schedule. 15 more minutes. In his private suite across the estate, Dominic stared at his reflection in the antique mirror. The man looking back at him was unrecognizable, not the calculated, controlled CEO who had methodically built his life according to a precise blueprint for success, but someone wild-eyed and uncertain, standing at a crossroads he'd never anticipated. A soft knock at the door preceded his best man's entrance. They're ready for you, Dom. Catherine looks incredible. Dominic turned slowly, decision crystallizing in his chest like ice forming over deep water. I need you to deliver a message. Marcus's smile faltered. What kind of message? Tell Catherine and her father that I can't go through with the wedding. This is a joke, right? Marcus laughed nervously, his eyes searching Dominic's face for any hint of humor. Finding none, his expression shifted to alarm. Dom, there are 300 people out there. The governor is here. Half the tech industry flew in for this. I know. Dominic's voice was eerily calm as he removed his tie. And I'm sorry for the spectacle this will cause. But I just received a call. Imani is in labor with my children. Children? What are you talking about? Imani Taylor? Your ex from last year. Twins. Girls. The words felt foreign on his tongue. She's at Mercy General right now. Marcus sank into a nearby chair, stunned. Jesus, Dom. Does Catherine know about any of this? No one does. I thought. Dominic ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, disheveling it. I thought Imani had terminated the pregnancy. That's what she told me. And you believed her without confirmation? That doesn't sound like the Dominic Vega I know. The man who triple-checks every detail of a contract. Dominic's jaw tightened. I wanted to believe her. It was convenient. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Convenient for his carefully orchestrated life plan. Convenient for the merger with Whitfield Industries that would coincide with his marriage to Catherine. Convenient for his public image as he prepared to announce his candidacy for the Technology Council that advised the White House. You can't just leave, Dom. At least talk to Catherine first. Explain. There's no time. Dominic was already moving toward the door. Imani is in labor now. 6 weeks early. Then send flowers. Send your lawyer. Send anyone but yourself on your wedding day. Dominic paused, hand on the doorknob. Would you? If they were your daughters? The question silenced Marcus, who had 2 little girls of his own. Tell them whatever you think best. That I had a medical emergency, a mental breakdown, or tell them the truth. That I'm a coward who's been living someone else's version of a perfect life, and I just ran out of time to pretend. With those words, Dominic Vega walked out on his own wedding. The chaos that erupted at the Bellevue estate would later be described by gossip columns as nuclear. Senator Whitfield, upon hearing that his future son-in-law had fled the premises, turned a shade of purple never before witnessed in Washington politics. Find him, he bellowed at security staff. Bring him back here immediately. Catherine's reaction was more controlled but no less intense. She dismissed her bridesmaids and mother from the bridal suite, then methodically removed each of the diamond hairpins from her elaborate updo, placing them one by one on the vanity. "Catherine, darling," her mother ventured from the doorway. "The guests are asking questions. What should we tell them?" "Tell them," Catherine said with glacial calm, "that there will be no wedding today, and then tell Daddy to destroy him." The drive to Mercy General was a blur of conflicting emotions. Dominic's hands gripped the steering wheel of his Aston Martin so tightly his knuckles turned white. His mind raced with questions he had no answers for. Why had Imani lied about terminating the pregnancy? Why tell him now at the most dramatic possible moment? What would this mean for his company, his reputation, his future? And beneath these practical concerns churned deeper, more unsettling questions. What kind of man abandons his own children before they're even born? What kind of man learns he's about to become a father and feels only resentment and inconvenience? What kind of man was he really beneath the tailored suits and practiced charm? Dominic had been born to immigrant parents who had sacrificed everything to give him opportunities they never had. His father had worked 3 jobs to put him through the best schools. His mother had spent evenings helping him with homework after long days cleaning other people's homes. They had instilled in him an unshakable work ethic and ambition, but somewhere along his meteoric rise, something essential had been lost. When had success become more important than humanity? When had strategic advantage replaced genuine connection? When had he become the kind of man who could coldly suggest handling an unplanned pregnancy as if it were a minor corporate crisis? The memory of that night with Imani 9 months ago flooded back with painful clarity. Her face as she'd told him about the pregnancy. Hopeful, vulnerable, uncertain. And his response so clinical, so detached. The hospital parking lot was nearly full, forcing him to leave his luxury car in a spot marked "Expectant Mothers Only." The irony wasn't lost on him as he sprinted toward the entrance, still in his wedding tuxedo, drawing curious stares from everyone he passed. At the information desk, he struggled to catch his breath. Imani Taylor. She's in labor. Maternity ward. The receptionist eyed his formal attire with raised eyebrows. "Are you family?" "I'm the father," he said, the words still strange on his tongue. "4th floor, East Wing, room 418. The elevator seemed to move with excruciating slowness. Dominic loosened his collar, suddenly feeling confined, trapped. What was he doing here? What would he say to Imani? What did he expect to happen? The maternity ward was a maze of corridors and identical doors. Dominic moved through them with the same purposeful stride that had carried him through boardrooms and investment meetings, but his confident exterior belied the turmoil within. He had no idea what came next in a life suddenly, dramatically off-script. When he finally found her room, he paused outside the door, hearing her muffled cries of pain from within. For a moment his courage faltered. He could still walk away, could still pretend he never received the call, could return to the Bellevue estate and beg forgiveness for his momentary panic, marry Catherine as planned, and continue his meticulously plotted ascent. But then he heard a nurse's voice. "You're doing great, Miss Taylor. Both babies are showing strong heartbeats. Both babies. His daughters. Real, not theoretical. Already here, already part of this world, whether he was prepared for them or not." Dominic pushed open the door, ignoring the protests of a startled nurse. "Sir, you can't just—" "I'm the father," he stated, the words feeling strange yet undeniably true. "I'm staying." Imani Taylor had never imagined giving birth alone. Throughout her pregnancy, she had constructed elaborate fantasies of supportive friends surrounding her, of her mother flying in from Chicago, of a doula coaching her through each contraction. But fate had other plans. Her mother was recovering from hip surgery, her closest friend was at a conference in Tokyo, and her carefully selected doula had been in a minor car accident that morning. So here she was, gripping the hospital bed rails as another contraction tore through her body, with only a kind but overworked nurse checking in between other patients. "You're doing great, Miss Taylor," the nurse assured her, adjusting the fetal monitor. "Both babies are showing strong heartbeats." Imani nodded, unable to speak as the pain peaked. She hadn't planned to call Dominic. For 8 months, she had built a life without him, transitioning from corporate law to a smaller practice that would allow more flexibility for motherhood, preparing her modest home for twins, attending every prenatal appointment alone while memorizing each ultrasound image like sacred text. But when her water broke 6 weeks early, terror had overridden resolve. Not for herself, but for the tiny lives she carried. What if something went wrong? What if difficult decisions needed to be made? Shouldn't their father at least know they existed before they entered the world? As the contraction subsided, Amani exhaled slowly, regretting the moment of weakness. Dominic Vega had made his position crystal clear that night in his penthouse. She had walked out of his life that night, ignoring his calls until they stopped coming. When she decided to keep the babies, she told herself it was her choice alone, one that required no input from a man who had made his priorities so abundantly clear. Until today, when pain and fear had momentarily shattered her resolve. Another big one coming, the nurse warned, glancing at the monitor. Amani braced herself, focusing on her breathing techniques. She wouldn't think about Dominic now, wouldn't wonder if he was standing at the altar at this very moment, exchanging vows with the senator's daughter whose photograph had appeared alongside his in the business press. Wouldn't imagine the life her daughters might have had if their father had been a different kind of man. The contraction built like a wave, stronger than the last, consuming her focus until the world narrowed to breath and pain and the fierce determination to bring her children safely into the world. She was so absorbed in the struggle that she didn't notice the commotion in the hallway, the raised voices, the hurried footsteps, the flurry of activity that preceded the door swinging open. "Sir, you can't just. I'm the father," came the unmistakable voice, the one that had commanded boardrooms and investment meetings, that had whispered against her skin in darkened rooms. "I'm staying." Imani's eyes flew open as the contraction ebbed, disbelief warring with the evidence before her. Dominic Vega stood in the doorway of her hospital room, still wearing his wedding tuxedo, his expression a complex mixture of determination and something she had never seen on his face before: fear. "You came," she whispered, the words barely audible. He moved to her bedside, hesitating before taking her hand. "You're having my children." The simplicity of the statement belied the seismic shift it represented. For a man whose life had been defined by meticulous control, by strategic decisions and calculated risks, this unplanned moment represented everything he had structured his existence to avoid. "Your wedding isn't happening." His grip tightened on her hand as he added, more softly, "Not today, maybe not ever." Before Amani could process this revelation, another contraction began building. Dominic's eyes widened as he felt her fingers clench around his, watched her face contort with effort. "What do I do?" he asked, genuine helplessness in his voice, perhaps for the first time in his adult life. "Just stay," she managed between controlled breaths. "Just be here." And remarkably, he did. The man who had built an empire by delegating, by maintaining distance, by never showing vulnerability, stayed through hours of labor. He wiped sweat from her brow with awkward tenderness, learned breathing techniques from the nurses, held her hand through contractions that made her cry out in pain. "You're doing amazing," he told her during a brief respite between contractions, his voice thick with emotion he couldn't name. "I don't know how you're doing this." Amani studied his face, searching for the calculating man she had known, finding instead someone raw and present in a way she had never witnessed. "I didn't have a choice," she said simply. "You did, though." His eyes met hers directly. "You chose to have them, to keep them, even after what I said, even knowing you might be alone." "I couldn't." Her words cut off as another contraction began. Dominic held her hand, counting breaths with her as the doctor had shown him. "When it passed," she continued, "I couldn't explain it, even to myself at first. But when I saw the ultrasound, they weren't an inconvenience or a problem to solve. They were people, our daughters." Dominic's throat tightened with shame and something else, a fierce, unexpected protectiveness he had never experienced before. "I'm sorry," he said, the words wholly inadequate for the magnitude of his failure. I was wrong. So wrong. Before Imani could respond, the doctor entered, checking the monitors and her progress. We're getting close, Miss Taylor. The first baby is in position. On the next contraction, I want you to push. What followed was a blur of intensity. Imani's strength and determination as she brought their first daughter into the world. The doctor's calm instructions, the nurse's efficient movements, and Dominic's stunned awe as a tiny, perfect human emerged at 8:47 p.m., announcing her arrival with a powerful cry. Would you like to cut the cord? The doctor asked, looking at Dominic. With trembling hands, he performed this first act of fatherhood, staring in wonder at the miniature features that somehow reflected his own. She's beautiful, he whispered, watching as the nurses quickly cleaned and swaddled his daughter, before placing her briefly on Imani's chest. Hello, little one? Imani murmured, tears streaming down her face as she touched the baby's cheek. We've been waiting for you. The moment was brief, as the second baby was already making her way into the world. 17 minutes later, her sister arrived, slightly smaller but equally fierce in her announcement to the world. Dominic, who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without flinching, who had faced down corporate rivals and government regulators with unwavering confidence, wept openly as he held his second daughter for the first time. They're so small, he said, voice cracking as he carefully cradled the tiny bundle. So perfect. As the medical team tended to Imani and the newborns, a strange calm settled over the room. The chaos of the day, the abandoned wedding, the frantic drive, the intensity of labor, all receded, leaving only this moment, this new reality that had irrevocably altered the course of all their lives. When they were finally alone, the babies sleeping in clear bassinets beside Imani's bed, Dominic pulled a chair close to her side. His tuxedo was rumpled, his hair disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed from tears he hadn't known he was capable of shedding. Why didn't you tell me? He asked quietly. All these months. Imani's exhausted face showed no anger, only a weary acceptance. You made your position very clear that night, Dominic. You didn't want children. They weren't part of your plan. But to let me believe you'd terminated the pregnancy. I never actually said that. Her voice was soft but firm. I said it had been taken care of. You assumed what you wanted to assume. The truth of her words struck him with painful clarity. He had heard what he wanted to hear, believed what was convenient to believe. I wouldn't have forced you to be involved, she continued. I was prepared to do this alone. I am prepared to do this alone. What if I don't want you to? The question escaped before he could analyze it, before he could consider its implications for his carefully structured life plan. Imani studied him, her expression guarded. Why? What changed? Dominic looked toward the bassinet where their daughters slept, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Everything. The moment I heard your voice, everything changed. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't a promise of happily ever after. It was something more fundamental, an acknowledgement that the carefully constructed narrative of his life had been irreversibly altered, and that perhaps the new story, unplanned and unpredictable as it was, might contain possibilities he had never allowed himself to imagine. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, the words costing him more than any financial investment ever had. I don't know how to be a father, but I want to learn. Dominic, Imani said carefully, you just left a woman at the altar. Your entire life is probably imploding right now. This isn't the moment to make declarations or promises. I know, he nodded, understanding the wisdom in her caution. I'm not asking for anything from you. I'm just telling you that I'm here, that I want to be part of their lives, that I'll do whatever it takes to earn the right to be their father. We have a lot to figure out, Imani said, neither accepting nor rejecting his presence in their lives. We do, he agreed, watching as a nurse approached with one of the twins, placing the tiny bundle in Imani's arms. But right now, I think we need to meet our daughters. As the second baby was handed to him, this titan of industry suddenly terrified by 7 pounds of new life, Dominic Vega understood with perfect clarity that he stood at the threshold of his greatest challenge and, perhaps his most meaningful achievement. Not in the boardroom or on the stock exchange, but here in this hospital room, learning to hold his daughter as if she were the most precious creation in the universe, which he was beginning to realize she absolutely was. If you believe that sometimes the most beautiful moments in life come from our biggest disruptions, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. The media frenzy erupted before Dominic and Imani had even left the hospital. Tech billionaire abandons senator's daughter at altar for secret lover child, screamed the headlines, accompanied by paparazzi photos of Dominic entering the hospital in his wedding tuxedo. Senator Whitfield wasted no time unleashing his considerable political influence against Horizon Dynamics. By the time Dominic checked his phone the morning after the births, 3 major government contracts were suddenly under review, and the Technology Council nomination he had been quietly cultivating was officially withdrawn. The board is demanding an emergency meeting, Marcus informed him by phone. The stock dropped 12% in pre-market trading. Catherine's father is out for blood, Dom. Schedule the meeting for tomorrow, Dominic replied, watching as Imani slept. The twins nestled in portable bassinets beside her bed. I'll be there. And what exactly are you planning to say to them? To the press? This is a PR nightmare of epic proportions. Dominic considered the question, his gaze fixed on his daughter's peaceful faces. The truth, that I made a mistake in pursuing a marriage without love. That I have 2 newborn daughters who need me. That I'm still the same CEO who built this company, but I'm also a father now, and that will necessarily change some things. They're going to crucify you, Marcus warned. The conservative investors are already threatening to pull out. The Whitfields are calling in every favor they're owed to damage us. Then we'll weather it, Dominic said with a certainty that surprised even himself. Horizon is built on the best security technology in the industry. Our products speak for themselves. After hanging up, Dominic approached Imani's bed as she stirred awake. How are you feeling? Like I pushed 2 humans out of my body, she replied with a tired smile. How bad is it out there? He hesitated, then decided on honesty. Bad. The press is having a field day. The Whitfields are retaliating through their political connections. My company is taking a hit. Imani's expression grew serious. I never meant for this to happen, Dominic. When I called you, I wasn't thinking about your wedding or the consequences. I was scared and... Don't apologize, he interrupted gently. Not for this. Not ever. Whatever happens with my company, with my reputation, it's the price I pay for my own choices. For not being honest with myself or anyone else about what I really wanted. And what do you really want? She asked, the question hanging between them, weighted with possibility. Before he could answer, a nurse entered with discharge papers. Everything looks good, Miss Taylor. You and the babies are cleared to go home whenever you're ready. The practical reality of going home suddenly presented itself. Imani had prepared her modest 2-bedroom apartment for the twins, with a nursery painted in soft yellows and greens. Dominic had... What? A sleek penthouse designed for entertaining business associates, not nurturing newborns. A life in shambles, with a furious almost bride and her politically powerful family out for revenge. I've arranged for a private car, he said, pushing these thoughts aside. And I've hired a postpartum doula to help you at home for the first few weeks. Imani raised an eyebrow. Without consulting me? Dominic recognized his mistake immediately. Falling back into his habit of taking control, making arrangements, solving problems without input from those affected. I'm sorry. I should have asked first. I just wanted to help. Imani's expression softened. I appreciate the thought. But Dominic, if we're going to figure out how to co-parent these girls, you need to understand something fundamental. I make my own decisions. About my life, about their lives when they're with me. Consultation isn't optional. It's essential. Dominic nodded, absorbing the gentle rebuke. You're right. I'm used to fixing things, controlling situations. Babies don't work that way, she said with a small smile. They're going to teach you that lesson repeatedly. As if on cue, one of the twins began to fuss, her tiny face scrunching up before releasing a surprisingly powerful cry. Amani reached for her, movements still tender from the birth, and cradled her against her chest. "This is Zora," she said, looking down at the baby. "And that's Nia. I hope you don't mind the names. I chose them months ago." "Zora and Nia," Dominic repeated, testing the names on his tongue. "They're beautiful. Perfect." The drive to Amani's apartment was tense with unspoken questions. The twins, secured in their car seats, slept peacefully, unaware of the complicated emotions swirling between their parents. When they arrived, Dominic carried the baby's bags while Amani carefully transported first one car seat, then the other into the building. Her apartment was exactly as she had described during their brief conversation at the hospital. Modest but comfortable, with a nursery painted in soft colors and furnished with 2 matching cribs, a changing table, and a rocking chair. What surprised Dominic was how immediately it felt like a home, warm and welcoming in a way his sleek penthouse never had. "It's not much," Imani said, misreading his silence as judgment. "But it's enough for us." "It's perfect," he replied honestly. "You've created a real home for them." The postpartum doula arrived shortly after, a warm, efficient woman named Eleanor who immediately took charge, showing Dominic how to properly support a newborn's head as he transferred Nia from her car seat to her crib. The lesson was the first of many over the coming days as Dominic navigated the steep learning curve of fatherhood. He had expected to feel out of place, unwelcome perhaps, but Imani established clear boundaries while still making space for him to be present. He could visit daily, she told him, could participate in feedings and diaper changes and the endless small tasks of newborn care, but he would not be staying overnight. Not yet, perhaps not ever. Their relationship needed to be redefined around their daughters, not around whatever lingering feelings might exist between them. Dominic accepted these terms with a humility that would have shocked his business associates. The man who demanded control in every situation, who negotiated ruthlessly for advantage in every deal, simply nodded and asked what time he should arrive the next day. The board meeting at Horizon Dynamics the following morning was exactly the bloodbath Marcus had predicted. Shareholders demanded explanations, executives questioned his judgment, and the PR team presented a grim assessment of the company's damaged public image. "The Whitfields have significant influence," the head of government relations reported. "We've already lost the Defense Department contract, and 2 more are hanging by a thread. Senator Whitfield sits on 3 committees that oversee areas critical to our business." Dominic listened to it all with a strange detachment. 24 hours earlier, this crisis would have consumed him completely. Now, his mind kept drifting to tiny fingers wrapped around his own, to the scent of newborn skin, to the weight of his daughter in his arms. "I understand everyone's concerns," he said when the reports concluded, "and I take full responsibility for the personal choices that have created this situation. But I want to be very clear. Horizon Dynamics is more than its CEO. It's built on revolutionary technology, exceptional talent, and a product that remains the best in the industry regardless of my personal life. The market disagrees," one board member pointed out. "We've lost nearly $1 billion in market cap since yesterday. The market is reacting emotionally, just like the press," Dominic countered. "But our fundamentals haven't changed. Our technology hasn't degraded. Our team hasn't lost its expertise." "What exactly are you proposing?" the chairman asked. "That we weather this storm. That we double down on product excellence while I work to repair the damage my personal choices have caused. And that we remember that companies survive PR crises every day. What kills them is losing focus on what made them successful in the first place." The meeting ended without resolution, the board agreeing to reconvene in 1 week to reassess the situation. As Dominic gathered his materials, the chairman approached him privately. "I've known you since you were pitching Horizon out of a garage," the older man said. "I've never seen you like this." "Like what?" "Centered. Present. Usually in these crises, you're 10 steps ahead, gaming out scenarios, manipulating variables. Today, you just spoke the truth." Dominic considered this observation. "I have twin daughters who are 2 days old," he said simply. They've changed my perspective on what constitutes a genuine crisis. The chairman nodded thoughtfully. Bring pictures next time. Babies have a way of softening even the most hardened investors. For the next 3 weeks, Dominic lived in a strange divided reality. During the day, he fought to stabilize his company, meeting with nervous investors, reassuring key clients, and developing a strategy to weather the Whitfield's political attacks. At night, he immersed himself in the world of infant care, learning to change diapers, prepare bottles, and soothe crying babies in the middle of the night. The press continued their relentless coverage, camping outside both his penthouse and Imani's apartment building. Speculation ran wild about the nature of their relationship, with tabloids alternately painting Imani as a calculating gold digger who had trapped a billionaire and Dominic as a heartless playboy who had abandoned his pregnant lover until the last possible moment. Neither characterization bore any resemblance to the reality unfolding behind closed doors. Two people who had once shared passion, now navigating the complex territory of co-parenting, finding their way one day at a time. You look exhausted, Imani observed one evening as Dominic gently rocked Zora, who had been fussing for hours. How bad is it at work? We've lost 3 major contracts. Stock is down 20%. The board is divided on whether to weather the storm or ask me to step down temporarily. He spoke matter-of-factly, his attention focused on the tiny bundle in his arms. But we'll survive. The core technology is still the best in the industry. Imani studied him, noting the changes 3 weeks of fatherhood had wrought. The perfectly tailored suits had given way to more casual attire that could withstand baby spit-up. The meticulously styled hair was often disheveled from running his hands through it during long nights. But the most striking change was in his eyes, softer now, more present, holding none of the calculated assessment that had once been his default expression. You've surprised me, she admitted. I didn't expect you to be so involved. I've surprised myself, he replied honestly. I never thought I wanted this, never thought I could do this. But now I can't imagine not being here. The moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Imani frowned. It was nearly 9 p.m., and they weren't expecting anyone. Peering through the peephole, she gasped softly. It's Catherine, she whispered to Dominic. Catherine Whitfield. Dominic's expression registered shock, then resignation. I should have expected this. She deserves the chance to say whatever she came to say. Imani hesitated, then nodded, taking Zora from his arms. I'll be in the nursery with the girls. When she opened the door, Catherine Whitfield stood in the hallway looking nothing like the polished political daughter featured in society pages. Her face was makeup-free, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a simple sweater, her expression not angry but weary. I'm not here to make a scene, she said before Dominic could speak. I just need to understand. He stepped aside to let her enter, closing the door on the curious neighbor who had poked her head out across the hall. Catherine, I'm sorry. Don't. She held up a hand. I've heard enough apologies from your lawyers, your PR team, even your mother. I don't need another one. I need to know why. Was it all a lie? Everything between us? Dominic gestured for her to sit, taking the chair opposite. Not a lie, he said carefully, but not the whole truth either. I think we both entered our relationship with clear goals that had little to do with love. Catherine didn't deny this. We made sense on paper, the tech visionary and the political insider. We could have accomplished extraordinary things together. Yes, he agreed, but at what cost? Living our entire lives according to a strategic plan rather than genuine feeling. And this is genuine? She gestured around the modest apartment. Living in a 2-bedroom walk-up with a woman you haven't seen in nearly a year? Changing diapers instead of changing the world? This is the authentic Dominic Vega? Before he could answer, a cry came from the nursery, followed by Imani's soothing voice. Catherine's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across her features. May I see them? She asked quietly. The babies. The request surprised him. Are you sure? She nodded, and Dominic led her to the nursery doorway. Inside, Imani sat in the rocking chair, one baby at her breast while the other slept in her crib. She looked up, startled, as they appeared. "I'm sorry to intrude," Catherine said, her voice softer than Dominic had ever heard it. "I just wanted to see them." Imani nodded, an unspoken understanding passing between the women. "This is Zora," she said, indicating the nursing baby. "And that's Nia in the crib." Catherine moved closer, gazing down at the sleeping infant. "She's beautiful," she whispered. "They both are." For a moment, the three adults stood in silence, the weight of all that had happened, and all that might have been, hanging in the air between them. Then Catherine straightened, composure returning. "Thank you," she said to Imani, "for allowing me this." Turning to Dominic, she added, "I won't be part of my father's vendetta against you or your company. What happened between us is separate from business. I've already told him as much." "Thank you," Dominic said, genuinely moved by her unexpected grace. "That means more than you know." At the door, Catherine paused for a final moment. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Dominic. I really do." After she left, Dominic returned to the nursery, where Imani was transferring the now sleeping Zora to her crib. "That was unexpected," she whispered. "Yes," he agreed, "but I think it was necessary. For all of us." As they stood together watching their daughters sleep, Dominic felt something shift inside him, the last pieces of his old self falling away, making room for the man he was becoming. A man who measured success not in stock prices or strategic alliances, but in tiny milestones. A baby's first smile, a moment of peace between feedings, the growing certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. If you've ever had your life completely transformed by the arrival of someone unexpected, hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. 6 months passed in a blur of sleepless nights, first smiles, and gradual adjustments. The twins grew from fragile newborns to chubby, curious babies who recognized their father's voice and reached for him when he entered the room. Horizon Dynamics weathered the initial storm, stabilizing as the media frenzy died down, and investors recognized that the company's fundamental value remained strong. Dominic and Imani established a co-parenting routine that worked for both of them. He had purchased an apartment in the same building, allowing him to be present daily while still respecting the boundaries Imani had established. They shared meals, pediatrician appointments, and the countless decisions that came with raising twins, finding a rhythm that centered on their daughter's needs rather than their complicated history. On a rare sunny Saturday in early spring, they took the twins to the park for the first time. Dominic pushed the double stroller while Imani carried a bag filled with all the essentials for an outing with 6-month-olds. Finding a quiet spot beneath a flowering cherry tree, they spread a blanket and settled the babies on it, watching as Zora and Nia batted at dangling toys and practiced rolling over. "They're getting so big," Dominic marveled, helping Nia sit up, supporting her wobbly back with his hand. "I can't believe how much they've changed." "Not just them," Imani observed, studying his face in the dappled sunlight. "You've changed too." He smiled, acknowledging the truth in her words. "For the better, I hope." "Definitely for the better." She hesitated, then added, "The old Dominic Vega would never have spent a Saturday in the park when he could be closing deals or strategizing his next corporate conquest." "The old Dominic Vega was missing everything that mattered," he replied simply. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughters explore the world around them with wide-eyed wonder. The past 6 months had taught Dominic more about himself than the previous 34 years combined. He had learned patience from long nights walking colicky babies. He had learned humility from the countless mistakes of new parenthood. Most importantly, he had learned that the control he had once prized above all else was largely an illusion. Life happened on its own terms, not according to even the most meticulously crafted plan. His phone buzzed with an incoming call, the screen displaying his CFO's name. 6 months ago, he would have answered immediately, regardless of the circumstance. Today, he silenced it without a second thought. "That might be important," Imani noted, having observed the gesture. "It might be," he agreed, "but not as important as this." As the afternoon progressed, Dominic found himself watching Imani as much as the twins. The way she laughed when Zora made a particularly amusing face. The gentle efficiency with which she changed Nia's diaper on the blanket. The quiet strength that had carried her through pregnancy alone, through birth, through these first months of motherhood. When had his admiration for her resilience evolved into something deeper? When had co-parenting become the highlight of his day rather than an obligation? When had her apartment started feeling more like home than his own? "Penny for your thoughts," Imani said, catching him staring. "I was just thinking about how different my life is from what I planned," he replied honestly, "and how much better it is for being unplanned." She smiled, but her eyes held a question. No regrets? About the wedding? The Whitfield alliance? All those carefully laid plans? "None," he said without hesitation. "Though I do regret how I handled things with you before. When you told me about the pregnancy." Imani nodded, acknowledging his words without immediately absolving him. "That was a different man," she said finally. "One I'm not sure I could have co-parented with, let alone." She trailed off, leaving the thought unfinished, but Dominic felt a surge of hope at what might have followed. Let alone loved again. Let alone built a life with. Before he could pursue the opening, his phone buzzed again, persistently this time. With an apologetic glance at Imani, he checked the screen. "It's Marcus. Third call in 10 minutes. Must be urgent." She nodded her understanding as he stepped away to take the call. "This better be important," he answered quietly. "We've been hacked," Marcus said without preamble. "A sophisticated attack targeting our government client databases. It's bad, Dom. Really bad." Dominic's mind immediately shifted into crisis mode, assessing implications, considering responses. How bad? Potential breach of classified systems. The Pentagon is already calling. So is the FBI. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, Dominic said, ending the call and returning to the blanket where Imani was helping Zora stand on wobbly legs. "You have to go," she said, reading his expression. "Major security breach at Horizon. I wouldn't leave if it wasn't critical." "I understand." And he could see that she did, truly. "The girls and I will be fine." Dominic knelt, kissing each twin on the forehead before rising. "I'll make this up to you. All of you. Just do what you need to do," Imani said. "We'll be here when you're done." The simplicity of that promise, "will be here," carried him through the next 72 hours of crisis management. The hack had indeed been sophisticated, targeting Horizon's most sensitive government contracts, though their security systems had contained the worst of the damage. Still, the incident required Dominic's complete focus, drawing on every ounce of his strategic thinking and leadership. The crisis management room at Horizon headquarters buzzed with activity as cybersecurity experts, legal counsel, and government liaisons worked around the clock. Dominic moved between stations, reviewing damage assessments, approving countermeasures, and personally calling affected clients. "We've traced the attack signature," the head of security reported during the third day. "It matches known patterns from a group with ties to foreign intelligence services." "And our vulnerabilities?" Dominic asked, scanning the technical report. "Minimal. The quantum encryption protocols held. They accessed peripheral systems but couldn't penetrate the core architecture." Dominic nodded, a grim satisfaction settling over him. The quantum encryption system had been Imani's suggestion during their relationship, when she challenged his approach to European data protection. He'd implemented it against the advice of several board members who thought it excessive. Now it had saved the company from catastrophe. As the immediate crisis subsided, Dominic found himself in his office at 3 a.m., staring at a framed photo on his desk. Zora and Nia at 4 months, matching grins revealing their first tiny teeth. He had missed 3 bedtimes, 3 mornings, countless small moments in their rapidly changing lives. 6 months ago, he would have considered this an acceptable sacrifice for business success. Now it felt like an unbearable loss. His phone chimed with a text from Imani. "Girls finally asleep. They missed their daddy. We all did." Attached was a photo of the twins in their cribs, peaceful in sleep. Something in Dominic's chest tightened, then released. With sudden clarity, he knew what he needed to do. He spent the next hour drafting a proposal, then called an emergency board meeting for 9 a.m. When the bleary-eyed directors assembled, Dominic stood before them with uncharacteristic vulnerability. 3 days ago, I was in the park with my daughters when this crisis began, he started. I left them to come here to do what needed to be done. And I don't regret that decision, it was necessary. But it highlighted something I've been considering for months. He distributed the document he'd prepared. This is my proposal for restructuring Horizon's leadership. I'll remain as CEO, but I'm recommending we create a new position, Chief Operating Officer, to handle day-to-day operations. This will allow me to focus on strategic direction while maintaining a more balanced life with my family. The board members exchanged glances, some skeptical, others curious. Dominic, the chairman said carefully, while we all appreciate the challenges of balancing work and family, Horizon needs its founder at the helm, especially after the security incident. I disagree, Dominic replied calmly. What Horizon needs is leadership that recognizes its own limitations. I built this company by controlling every aspect of its operation, working 18-hour days, sacrificing everything else. That approach worked when I was building something from nothing. It's not what we need now. He gestured to the windows overlooking the city. This attack was contained because of a security protocol I implemented based on advice from someone who saw things differently than I did. Diversity of perspective saved us, not my micromanagement. The discussion continued for hours with pointed questions about timing, candidate selection for the COO position, and potential market reaction. Throughout, Dominic maintained a centered calm that impressed even his strongest critics on the board. You've changed, the chairman observed during a break. 6 months ago, you would have fought this attack by working 20-hour days until you collapsed, insisting no one could handle it but you. 6 months ago, I didn't understand what was truly irreplaceable, Dominic replied. By early afternoon, the board had approved his proposal in principle, with details to be finalized in the coming weeks. As the meeting adjourned, Dominic felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Not the burden of responsibility, which he still carried, but the crushing pressure of perfection, of control, of living according to a plan that no longer served his deepest values. He drove directly to Imani's apartment, stopping only to pick up dinner for them both. When she opened the door, surprise registered on her face. I thought you'd be at Horizon for days, she said, stepping aside to let him in. I am. He set down the food and his briefcase. But I needed to see them. To see you. The twins were on their play mat in the living room, Zora attempting to crawl while Nia contentedly chewed on a teething toy. At the sight of Dominic, they both lit up, Zora abandoning her crawling efforts to bounce excitedly, Nia releasing a stream of delighted babbles. He sank to the floor beside them, gathering both into his arms, breathing in their baby scent, feeling the solid weight of them against his chest. I missed you both so much, he murmured into Zora's curls. Imani watched from the doorway, her expression soft. Crisis resolved? Contained, he corrected, looking up at her. And it led to some important realizations. Later, after the twins were bathed and put to bed, Dominic and Imani sat at her small kitchen table, sharing the meal he'd brought and the events of the past 3 days. So you're really restructuring the company? She asked, impressed by the boldness of the move. Creating a COO position just so you can have more family time? Not just for that, he clarified. Though that's a significant part of it. The attack showed me that Horizon has outgrown the one-man leadership model. We need diverse perspectives, distributed authority, checks and balances. Still, Imani said, studying him over her wine glass, it's a dramatic shift for someone who once told me that delegation is just an opportunity for other people to disappoint you. Dominic winced at the reminder of his former arrogance. I was wrong about a lot of things. A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with the soft sounds of the apartment, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant city noises through the partially open window, the occasional murmur from the twins' room through the baby monitor. Imani, Dominic began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. These past 6 months have been the most transformative of my life. Being a father to Zora and Nia has changed everything about how I see the world, how I define success, what I value." She nodded, waiting for him to continue. "But it's not just about the girls." He met her eyes directly. "It's about you too. Watching you as a mother. Working alongside you as we figure out this co-parenting journey. Getting to know you again. Not as the woman I had a relationship with before, but as the incredible person you are now." Imani's expression remained carefully neutral. "What are you saying, Dominic?" "I'm saying that I think I'm falling in love with you. Not the way I was before, that was passion and intellectual connection, but still somehow surface level. This is deeper, more real." He took a breath. "And I'm saying that I know I have no right to expect anything from you, given our history. But I wanted you to know where I stand." For a long moment, Imani was silent, her eyes searching his face as if looking for any trace of the calculating man she had known before. Finding none, she sighed softly. "When I found out I was pregnant," she said finally, "I was terrified, not just of being a single mother, but of loving these babies who were half you. I was afraid they would remind me every day of the man who had dismissed them, and me so coldly." Dominic flinched but remained silent, giving her space to continue. "But something amazing happened," she went on. "As they grew inside me, as I saw their ultrasounds and felt their movements, they became entirely their own people. Not half you or half me, but wholly themselves. And I fell completely in love with them for exactly who they are." She reached across the table, tentatively taking his hand. "I think something similar has happened with you. The man sitting across from me now isn't the Dominic Vega who broke my heart last year. He's someone new, shaped by that man's experiences, yes, but fundamentally different in all the ways that matter most." Hope bloomed in Dominic's chest. "And that man? The one I am now." A small smile curved Imani's lips. "That man I might be falling in love with too. But Dominic, we have to be careful. We have Zora and Nia to consider. If we try this and it doesn't work, it will complicate everything," he acknowledged. "I know. That's why I want us to take it slowly, to be intentional, to build something real, based on who we are now, not who we were before." "Slowly," she agreed, her fingers tightening around his. "And honestly, complete honesty, even when it's difficult." "Especially when it's difficult," he promised. That night, for the first time in 6 months, Dominic didn't return to his apartment. Instead, he slept on Imani's couch, waking at dawn to the sounds of Nia's hungry cries through the monitor. He padded quietly to the nursery, lifting his daughter from her crib before she could wake her sister. "Good morning, little one," he whispered, carrying her to the kitchen to prepare a bottle. Imani found them there 20 minutes later, Dominic in yesterday's rumpled shirt, Nia contentedly cradled in one arm as he sipped coffee with his free hand. "You stayed," she said, her voice still husky with sleep. "I stayed," he confirmed. "And if it's all right with you, I'd like to keep staying. Not necessarily here, not yet, but in this life we're building. With you, with them." Imani crossed the kitchen, pressing a gentle kiss to his cheek, then to Nia's forehead. "I think we'd all like that very much. If you believe in the power of love to transform us into the people we're meant to become, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that remind us what truly matters in life." 1 year after that fateful phone call on his wedding day, Dominic Vega stood in the nursery of a new home. Not his sleek penthouse or Imani's modest apartment, but a spacious brownstone they had chosen together, with room for their growing family and the life they were building. The twins, now 18 months old, raced unsteadily around the room, their personalities as distinct as their matching faces. Zora, bold and adventurous, climbed fearlessly onto anything within reach. Nia, thoughtful and observant, studied the world with serious eyes before breaking into the brilliant smile that never failed to melt her father's heart. "Dada," Zora called, holding up a book for him to read. "Dada book." "In a minute, sweetheart," he promised, adjusting the mobile hanging over the crib in the corner. A crib that would soon hold their newest family member, due in just 2 months. Amani appeared in the doorway, one hand resting on her rounded belly. "The mobile looks perfect," she said, smiling at his meticulous attention to detail. "Though I'm pretty sure this baby won't care if it's exactly centered." "Probably not," he agreed, stepping back to admire his handiwork. "But I care." She crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "Who would have thought a year ago that we'd be here, expecting another baby, planning a wedding?" "Not me," he admitted, turning to face her. "I was too busy planning a life that looked perfect on paper but felt empty in reality." The journey from co-parents to partners had been gradual, intentional, and profoundly healing. They had dated properly this time. Actual dates with babysitters and reservations, conversations that lasted until dawn, a courtship built on mutual respect and the shared love of their daughters. When Dominic proposed 6 months earlier, it wasn't with a splashy photo shoot or strategic timing, but during a quiet moment at home, the twins asleep, the future stretching before them full of possibility. Horizon Dynamics had weathered its storms and emerged stronger. The new leadership structure Dominic had implemented proved remarkably effective, allowing the company to benefit from diverse perspectives while freeing him to focus on innovation and strategic direction. He still worked hard, that fundamental aspect of his character hadn't changed, but his priorities had shifted irrevocably. Success was no longer measured in stock prices or media coverage, but in moments. Zora's first steps, Nia's first words, the sound of their laughter filling the home he shared with Amani, in the growing curve of her belly that held their son, in the quiet evenings when they talked about everything and nothing, building the foundation of a partnership based on truth rather than convenience. "What are you thinking about?" Amani asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "About how sometimes the wrong turn leads to exactly the right destination," he replied, drawing her closer. "About how grateful I am that you called me that day, even though you weren't sure you should." "I almost didn't," she admitted. "I had my finger on the end call button when you answered. Thank God you didn't press it." He rested his forehead against hers. "Thank God for unanswered prayers and disrupted plans and all the beautiful chaos that led us here." A crash from across the room interrupted the moment. Zora had successfully scaled the bookshelf and was triumphantly throwing books to the floor while Nia watched with an expression that somehow managed to convey both admiration and disapproval. "Speaking of beautiful chaos," Imani laughed, moving to retrieve their adventurous daughter before she could climb higher. Dominic watched them, his heart full beyond measure. The life he had so carefully planned had shattered with a single phone call, and from those fragments had emerged something he never could have designed or controlled. Something authentic, messy, challenging, and infinitely more precious than the perfect facade he had once pursued. As he joined his family, lifting Nia into his arms while Imani gently scolded Zora for her climbing adventures, Dominic Vega, billionaire CEO, expectant father, man transformed by love, understood with perfect clarity that sometimes life's most beautiful blessings arrive in the form of our greatest disruptions. And for that disruption, that unexpected call on what should have been his wedding day, he would be forever grateful. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories about life's unexpected journeys and the courage to choose love. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin with the words, "This isn't what I planned." Until next time, this is Mr. Harrison, reminding you that true love isn't about perfect timing. It's about perfect recognition of what truly matters.